Welcome to this special episode of The Meaning Mindset with Rabbi Ron. I am, as always, delighted and honored to have your time to share this episode with you. And I think you're going to be delighted with the content. I'm here. This isn't green screen behind me. These aren't studio sounds of the wind passing through beautiful, tall pine trees, birds that you'll hear during the episode. This is me in Mammoth Lakes, California. If you haven't been, come, make the drive. Come to Mammoth Lakes, California. See the lakes and the majestic, gorgeous mountains and the scenery that dazzles at every turn. Well, this time coming up to Mammoth wasn't just for the beauty of the place. It was for the wisdom that I was to come to derive from a meaningful conversation with a great guy. He's called Steve Searles. You might know Steve Searles by another name. He's known as the Bear Whisperer. If that isn't intriguing enough, in this hour you'll hear his thoughts on what it is to live in nature, with nature, to manage nature, to be managed by nature, to come to respect nature around him, and to live in very, very, very close proximity in conversation, literally and figuratively, with bears. The book that he wrote was a collaboration with Chris Erskine. Chris is a great writer, a syndicated columnist from the LA Times, read all over. Chris and Steve sat down together a couple of years ago for a single article for the LA Times, and presumably for syndication, about this unique man and the unique work that he was doing here in Mammoth Lakes. But what came of it was a deep friendship, a great mutual respect, I'd say a love of one another that human beings could share when they come to know each other's vulnerabilities. And also a fantastic book, one of my favorite reads. It's called, and I urge you to read it, it's called What the Bears Know: How I Found Truth and Magic in America's Most Misunderstood Creatures. Let's get straight to it, my conversation with Steve Searles. Steve, I feel like through the book, I have a good sense of you, but the time I've spent with you gives me a much richer sense of who you are, and I'm really grateful to know you and to be privileged to sit in your backyard talking about your life and the book and bears and the amazing impact that you've had and continue to have, not only on the ecology, but on people's hearts and minds all over the world that are reading your story, heard you, seen you on television, learning more about themselves, not just you, through all the media that you have.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been very different getting people's, response to my story.
You said to me that you didn't have a linear path, like the guy who goes from this grade to that one to the other to college to the job and then eventually gets the gold watch. I haven't either, by the way, but I think there's a lot of richness in that weaving, winding road. Do you feel that way about your life?
I think I'm a very lucky person, and I've had a lot of breaks, and I'm grateful, but it's been very unusual, and I've seen a lot in a very short life.
Yeah. I feel, this is philosophically, religiously even, that if I'm alive and if you're alive, then there's a reason for it. And I think you're placed on this earth to do something in whatever years you're given. And I think you're doing it in a way that's unique, obviously. I don't think there are many of you on the planet, or any of you on the planet, other than the one in that seat. And I'm grateful for that. I want to hold the book up and just talk about it. Chris Erskine, somebody I knew through the LA Times. I know he's syndicated all over as an author. And I know he was moved by an idea to come up and do an article with you. And then you said, I think there's more than an article. There's a story in a book. And it became this, What the Bears Know. And I love the subtitle. I love the title. I also love the subtitle. What I love about the title is, why are we to assume that we're the only sources of wisdom and beauty in this world? And here it says, How I Found Truth and Magic in America's Most Misunderstood Creatures. I think of bears as being thought of as beautiful and terrifying. You agree?
I think most people feel that way.
Yeah, you said to me there are like three categories of animals that we're wowed by and terrified of. What are they?
Monkeys, elephants, and
Yeah,
bears. Yeah.
yeah. And you don't live with the monkeys and the elephants, but bears. So why are we so afraid of them, first of all?
It's been going on since the beginning of time, and all the campfire stories and misinformation. I spent most of my career combating against those misconceptions and those perceived thoughts that most people in the world carry in their hearts.
Yeah. What a shame for the bears.
Very, very sad.
And maybe what a shame for us that we raised our kids to be tense and nervous around things that are actually, in your case, you've taught us, docile and beautiful. We don't have grizzly bears, haven't had them since when?
I think we shot the last one in California in 1928. Now we pay homage to what we exterminated by putting it on our California state flag, all the sheriff's badges, all
Yeah.
of that carries the grizzly bear, not the black bear.
And the
And
black bear
so,
here, sorry, that's what you have here in Mammoth.
just black bears.
And are they dangerous at all?
They're,
To cars, obviously.
I don't think we should mess with any animal, a
Yeah.
chipmunk, a bird. We shouldn't pet buffalo, but people do it every day.
Yeah.
Here, bears are widely accepted, and I think it's the number one place in the world for coexistence with black bears.
Mm. One thing of many that I loved about your book, and I told you, but I want to repeat how I came to your book. I'm in a book club with a bunch of great guys, and one of them is a great guy and a wonderful architect, worth looking him up, Ken or Kenneth Unger. And Ken got to host the next book club event, and he said, here's the book we're reading. And we were like, oh, it sounds interesting. Mammoth and bears and you. And we read it and loved it. And this is a pretty diverse group of men and different paths of life and work and perspectives. And we came back a month later to talk about the book and to eat and drink wine together. And everybody was so animated talking about you and the bears and the stories and the wisdom that each of us derive from your encounters and also your struggles. It wasn't just like this is a book of victories. It certainly isn't. What are some of the truths? You talk about the truth and magic that you've learned from living amongst and working with bears. What's some of the truth, first of all, before we get to the magic?
Again, there's a lot of misconceptions about who I am and my lifestyle and what I do, and I'm credited with, understanding bears and teaching bears. But they really taught me, as someone who didn't go to school without an education or a degree, um, the bears were very patient with me and all the goofy stuff I did and the thousands of hours I spent with them. They
Day
taught
and night.
day and night. That's all I did. I'm a control freak. I'm a fanatic. When I get into something, that's what I do every day until I've gotten to the highest level I can. Then I never do it again and I start the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
With bears, you can never get to that highest level. So there are no experts on bears in the world. There's just some people that know more than others. But the bears taught me how they live, their respect, their fears, their anxieties, their joy. And I learned a lot from that for my own self. And then I used it against them to help them learn how to live with us.
So your goal, I remember from the book and from our conversations that you were brought in and asked to deal with a problem. First, it was coyotes and all these other problems, raccoons, coyotes, everything that was getting in the way of people coming here and having fun. And you did that, which meant culling a lot of animals. And then it came to the next request, which is what number of bears needed to be culled?
16 was the number decided on to put down at one go and then go into the winter and then reassess in the spring.
And what was your response?
I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I'll need some time to study them and make a shoot list and and photograph so I know which bears are going to be destroyed and removed from the population. And through that process, um, I had that aha moment where, there might be a better way of doing it. I went to the chief of police at the time, and he said, "You could try all this silly stuff you want, as long as when you're done doing that, you put them down." And so that green lighted me trying non lethal approaches to teach bears where they can be and where they can't be, when they can be there and when they can't be there.
And how'd you do that?
It was trial and error. A lot of stuff I tried was dumb, and I dropped that. The stuff that worked, we applied more. But if you are at the post office at 2 in the afternoon, I would kick your ass. If you're there at 2 in the morning, passing through, you're good to go. So
You being the bear?
the bear.
Yeah.
And so these were the crazy ideas that I had. If I could, we do 1.5 million visitors a year at the time from all over the world, many that don't even speak our language. So while I was trying to do public education, I had a very small number of maybe the more intelligent animal, the four-legged rather than the two-legged, that they just learn much quicker than we do. You were in school longer than the average bear lives its life.
Yeah.
So their learning curve is just so much sharper. Being a lazy man, I picked the easiest of the two animals in the equation to teach. And those,
Meaning not humans.
right.
Yeah, we're difficult to teach.
And those successes happen very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad says I'm a quick learner. You have to teach me slowly.
Yes.
Maybe it's the same with all of us. So what did it mean to say, get the hell out of here to a bear?
Like I say, it took time, and a lot of the dozens of different devices that are less than lethal, noisemakers,
Firecrackers.
all that stuff is deployed out of a 12-gauge shotgun.
Yeah.
And
An orange shotgun.
Yeah.
Not for the bear's sake, but for ours, so we don't freak out. Seeing you come out of your truck.
When I
with
ran a
shotgun.
normal black shotgun, people would scream or run in front of the shot. They didn't realize it was non-lethal. When we came up with the orange shotgun, people thought it, must shoot Twinkies or something. It stopped the screaming and people running in front of the bullet. But as the years went on, my relationship was as close as you and I are right here.
To the bears?
Yes.
But you made a decision. I remember, I think this was early on, that you needed to get in the culvert with the bears. You needed to put GoPros everywhere, even if they were going to eat them. But you didn't want the distance from them. You wanted to have an intimate relationship to them, knowledge of them. What'd you do with your fear when you did that?
As the tourist that I tend to criticize, that they don't learn very quickly. I'm a slow learner as well. And so I spent an inordinate amount of time with the bears. If they slept, I slept. If they went for a walk, I went for a walk. If they're eating, I wanted to study their scat. It took years and years, to learn all of their idiosyncrasies and what was most important to them.
Mm-hmm. What did you learn about yourself through that?
I'm an anxious guy. I can make a cup of coffee nervous. And when you hold a puppy or you hold a newborn baby, it doesn't matter how anxious you are. You whisper, you calm yourself, you focus, you are more attentive about things that minutes before you weren't. Being with bears has that same phenomena. They are so captivating. They're so interesting. They're so funny. I think it quieted me, which I probably needed more than I knew. And so those thousands and thousands of hours being alone, the bears live pretty much alone. They don't, have too much fellowship in their lives. And I like talking to you. I like your son. I like your wife. I enjoy us sharing different ideas. Bears don't need that in their lives. They're comfortable to be alone. It's their,
Alone, meaning solitary, one bear?
yep.
Huh. So once they're not raising cubs.
The male has nothing to do with raising the cubs, only the female. So food, water, habitat, and if he's lucky, he might get laid once a year.
Literally, that rate?
Yeah, and that's their life. That would be miserable for me.
Yeah.
They're good with it. So I think that, subliminally, let me know that even though I was a square peg in a round hole, I still struggle with it, but it's okay to be alone and be at one with your thoughts.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I also struggle with that, or used to. I never thought I needed solitude, and I'd fear it. I'd travel away, and I'd need to be with people. I'd go, even spending a day, my wife would say, go spend some time on your own, just to get some peace and relax after working so intensely. And I thought, I don't know how to do that. I'd get somewhere, and then I'd call her or my brother or somebody, say, hey, do you want to come? I'm in a great place. And it wasn't until a certain point in my life, probably in the last 10, 15 years, that I thought, oh, I can drop my shoulders and just be, and get a table for one in a restaurant and not be self-conscious or lacking something. Maybe you relate to that as well.
My wife at the time, she had to put up with all this and my, diving into things and working with the animals and the tears and the fears. If we were, upset at each other, she would often say, go be with your bears.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my wife and I, our bears are sharks.
There
We're
you
scuba
go.
divers. And people say, you swim with sharks? Are you crazy? There's something amazing. I mean, the word that comes to mind always, some of my favorite moments in diving are surfacing at the end of a dive, because we couldn't talk, and I'm an extrovert. I need to process. And we come to the surface after being 100 feet down with, in one case, hundreds of sharks, or the colors, the fish, and coming up, and my eyes are so big, and I'm like, did you see that? Can you believe what we just witnessed? And I think we need that in our lives. We need awe, and we don't necessarily get awe from the television, certainly not from the news. Awe spelled differently, maybe, like awe, what the hell is happening to our world? But real awe, A-W-E, to be awestruck, is powerful and necessary. And maybe it's these giant trees that do that to us, and seeing a bear and her cubs that makes us feel small. We need to feel small. That's not an issue of low self-esteem. It's just being human, to be humbled by this beautiful world.
I couldn't agree more. And just a few generations ago, your grandfather or great grandfather, in the scheme of things, that's less than a millisecond of time.
Right.
And people, all people were much closer to the land and to nature and the earth and things that are, I think, are fundamentally necessary to be a human. In that millisecond of time, we've lost track of that, and we don't harvest our own food, which is fine, but that's what it's come to. And people don't know which way north is. To not be able to know your bearings on a compass, it's fundamentally important to, I think, to be a healthy human. Today, our car tells us which way to turn.
Right.
And, we don't have paper maps. It's very, very different, and it's happened so quickly that I think it has caused the amount of confusion and disappointments that we're seeing ramp up daily in our lives and on the news.
Yeah, I also look at the dirt under our feet, and I think about parenting, how parenting's changed, right? Continually, for the better and for the worse. And one of the things that we've lost is, I'll call it reverence for dirt, for the tree, for letting kids get dirty, not having these kind of clinically clean environments. Remember during COVID, we were washing our hands. I'm surprised we have skin left. Instead of being out under trees and getting our kids run. I'm not criticizing policy. That's not even my point. But it's something about what we've done as a society, which is to see this as unfinished. It needs to be finished by us, instead of seeing this as perfectly imperfect, the crooked tree, the branch that broke, all the stuff that we see around us. The kids need to see and feel. And how many kids don't see starlight because they live in cities? You and I are fortunate that we live on streets without streetlights at night, and we see the stars and have a sense that we're on a planet, but in a universe, which is amazing. And maybe what's great about that for humans is that it humbles us. We realize we're a speck in a speck of time. There's a teaching that I love, Jewish teaching, that says that we should have two little pieces of paper, one in each pocket. One that says, for me, the world was created. That sounds like the ego statement, meaning I need to do something with this world in my life today. And the other one is, I'm but dust and ashes, meaning I'm nothing. There's a life well lived, humility and a sense of purpose. I sense from you a deep sense of purpose in your life. You talk in the book about one of the ahas in your life, one of the moments of recognition of a truth, wisdom, meaning, which is the three parts of you that should align. Do you want to talk about that a little? Because that's exactly what we're talking about now.
Yeah, what you're referring to is, how other people see you, how you're perceived around your peers, your friends, your community, how you see yourself, and how you really are. Those three tracks, if they're paralleling on course, you're probably pretty well balanced in your heart, your mind, your soul. If those things are off on tangents, it can cause mental illness and all kinds of challenges and confusion. Mine have always been on different tangents, and people, as I, more and more media and more attention and everything that has happened in my career, people had a vision of who I was. Who I think I am is much lower than that. I have low self-esteem, and who I really am is a pretty good neighbor and member of our community. But it's always a struggle to try to bring those to a parallel.
Yeah. I know from our conversations, and it's really clearly written in the book, that you went through hell in your childhood. And I feel like what your parents taught you, whether that was their intention or not, I want to give them credit, say it wasn't their intention, but you knew them, I didn't, was that you're worth less. Not worthless, I'd hate to think that, but worth less. Worth less than them, worth less than anybody else you're going to meet. And I think maybe that's why you have the sense of you in the mirror that we don't see, because we see your worth. And you have this maybe ingrained sense that they gave you that you're going to go through life on a lower track, not having the same impact as other people. Maybe that's just a simple truth for all of us, that if we suffer in that way, we come to have some false belief about ourselves.
In my case, and in many young people's case, it was really much more than that. It was compounded, least likely to succeed.
Yeah.
And by every margin, and so to get a chance and to be in the shoes I'm in today, again, it's not lost on me, but it's very different. It's very, very different.
Yeah. What about fear? You talk a lot about fear. You're talking about bears, and fear comes up a lot in the book. Your own fear, our human fear. I feel like you and Chris wanted to underline some thoughts to us about what our fears are doing, the roles they play in our lives, and even I saw it come up in terms of the fear that the bears have of us.
I think that the we act reactionary in life and respond, rather than be in front of it. Most things that we're seeing in today's news, I watched the news this morning with my coffee. A lot of it is based on fear, and I think it's debilitating. I've seen in my career, I've gone on thousands of calls as a first responder, and I see people do the weirdest things because of fear.
Yeah.
And so we tried to write about it and use the bear, as a metaphor or a hook on the bigger things in life
Yeah.
that are even more important. But, I've worn a gun for decades. Since I was a young man, I've carried a gun, licensed to
Yeah.
carry a gun. And why? Because of, I pray that I don't ever need it. But there's a lot of things in life that are very, very scary.
Yeah.
I never carried a sidearm for a bear. It would be useless with a bear. But there's a lot of crazy people. There's a lot of people that are, messed up in this world.
And messing up the world. There's the core of the book, which is somehow pictured on the cover. It's bears. And yet I think somebody somewhere in the world, probably many, many somebodies, are relating to different aspects of who you are. And by the way, credit to Chris Erskine. This is great writing you and he did. And I know you told me there was that number of pages that had to be brought down and down to where it could fit in a book that your publishers would accept. But there's a lot in this. And everybody's being touched by, moved by, taught by something else. There's somebody who didn't get much about bears, but got a lot about being a kid who was beaten up from this story and thought, okay, I can have a life too. And there's somebody who dealt with loss of a child who read your book, who maybe feels, okay, there's life after that too, even though this wasn't what the subject or title of the book was. And there's somebody who's gone through painful divorce, who says, okay, I can travel farther on the road, even if it's just by a day for today, a couple steps, because of what they read. And somebody who can face fears, literally stare a bear, the thing they fear most, in their eyes, and feel, okay, I too can do that because of this guy whom I'll probably never meet, because they're in another country or just won't have the opportunity to do what I'm privileged to do. So I feel like you're doing a great service through this book by bearing your soul. You're very vulnerable in the book. I feel like what you and Chris did, which is amazing, is really carry your voice. I hear you in this book. When I met you, I wasn't surprised by you. That tells me that was a great, great memoir.
I think that, people took out of it different things. And again, thousands and thousands of people have written to me about what the message was important to them. But again, I appreciate your perception and sharing with me, but being me and that it's about me is very difficult. When Chris and I got to the last day of the final manuscript of the book, he said, this is it. There are no more changes, no more corrections. I'm going to send it to New York to be published. And so I sat down and read through the final version, and I was crying. And I cry a lot, but I was crying. And I called Chris and I said, geez, this is a really sad book. I said, there's things that we all take to the grave.
This isn't you, right? You are yourself, but you get to put out a gift into the world. And maybe that's a way to think about it. That it's, yes, you made yourself vulnerable and you told your story, the good, the bad, and the very ugly. But now this gets to take its own path. And people get to learn about themselves through it. Not just bears, not just you.
I've done every media outlet, magazines, television, radio for many years. And they were all very nice to me and helpful, but they all told those stories around the world about what their perception was.
Yeah.
Back to these tangents of life, this swan song or memoir, part of it was to help correct and put in writing how I actually felt about it versus how millions of people perceived that I felt about it, or how it was reported that I was, what my motivations were or what my direction was. This book is contrary to a lot of that reporting, but it was my opportunity to tell the truth about, my anxieties, my fears, my challenges.
Yeah. To an audience of people with anxieties, fears, and challenges.
A guy with a ponytail that didn't go to high school, and they gave me a badge and a gun and a uniform, and I have a siren and radios. I got all the cool stuff, and they said, do whatever you want. That was a bad call. They'll never do that again. And I was so struck by it. I really hyper-focused and made sure that I was doing the very best I could.
Yeah.
And for years, I pretended there was, I'd be out there at 3 a.m. with a loaded gun, and it's dark and it's, unnerving and all these animals and decisions to make. I always pretended there was a big screen TV of all the people in the town being there with me. And whether I did something that was lawful or unlawful or, dangerous or not dangerous or shooting from a moving car or whatever the predicament was, I always looked to that big screen TV to try to represent the people and the animals. And
so to be part of a people in a community.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to reflect on the lives of bears that you took. How's that affected you? Was it a job, or did it impact you in a deeper way than that?
I think I have a disease. I can feel people's pain. I can feel the animals' pain. It's debilitating for me. It's a horrible part of my life. When you're in your life, when I'm in a room with 1,000 people that are all praying and thinking good thoughts, if you're a stone atheist, you can feel it. It is a real, tangible thing.
Yeah.
I've been in riots with 1,000 people. You can feel that if you're deaf, dumb, and blind. The shit's happening. So with that collective thought, that collective conscious, the same thing as, a bear's hit by a car, the big screen TV is on, people are waiting for me to get there as fast as I can.
Because the bear's still alive and needs to be put down?
Yep.
Yeah,
and part of my job, many bears I didn't put down. I'd be with them every day and see if they're getting better or worse.
Yeah.
And sometimes 3 weeks later, I would take their life. Sometimes they have their incredible at healing and enduring pain. If you broke your femur right now, you'd beg for me to shoot you
Yeah.
or get you medical attention.
Yeah.
Many bears have broken limbs or have been shot or shot with an arrow that live full lives.
Mm.
And so I had to assess all of that,
Yeah.
talk to them, and then if it was time, sit them down and take their lives, and
Yeah.
into the back of my truck they would go
So you'd say talk to them first.
every single time.
Yeah. Did you sense that you had shared language? I don't mean just the sounds you made to draw them down from a tree, but a way of communicating?
My conversations with bears and their conversations with me, that sounds really weird.
To somebody.
In my life, it's undeniable. And it was something that, did I pursue? I did. But, I never realized how it was. They say people that are blind can smell really good, or people that are deaf, can, you compensate for other things. For me, I'm so lacking in so many ways. I think a higher power, I think the universe, Mother Nature, whatever you pray to, I think blessed me with an ability. I'll never know why, but I'm positive that that's what happened. I'd be on calls with 100 people. I'd be moving a bear through, and he would go to the right. I'd say no, go to the left, and this has been filmed many, many times.
Hello. Good morning, I should say.
If you have a dog in your life, a good dog might have a vocabulary of 40 or more words.
Right.
That I became world famous because I speak to bears. In hindsight, why aren't we all speaking to bears? We speak to our cat. We speak to our dog. We speak to our horse. We know scientifically that bears are smarter than all of those animals. So that my bears, our bears, learned a vocabulary, bad bear, or good bear, or understood reward and risk and reward. Yeah, people are fascinated by it, but maybe we've been shorting the deal for a long time.
I think about a big bear, a sow, who would let you walk her cubs every morning. Isn't that relationship? Isn't that communication and trust? Where she would go foraging and leave her babies with you?
Yeah. It's amazing stuff.
It is. It's awe. It's awesome.
And I resisted it as much as anyone. This can't be happening. The bear spirit, I believe in that.
Yeah.
Had a different plan, and kept constantly showing me the light and very patiently showing me by example and teaching me.
Yeah. You mentioned the bear spirit, which clearly is something that turns a light bulb on in my head. Because I think we're more than just, flesh. I think there's more to us. And sometimes, whether it's afterlife or not, what about even in this life, that we're bigger than what we think we are. We can't be contained in this energetically. I felt that even though when you and I met for the first time, you said to me, look, I've looked you up. I've read about you. I don't really know why you drove all the way up here. Or my friend said, why is he driving to talk to you? I know why. And I feel grateful and gratified. But also, I think there was a beautiful, I'll call it spirituality, and it's a word that you use throughout the book. And I think you also had what, in religious terms or spiritual terms or the terms of this awesome nature, it's just called reverence. You have and had and always seem to express in the book and in person a sense of awe and reverence.
When all this was going on, I was getting a lot more knowledge about the physical bear. And
Sorry, Steve, take me back for a second. When all what was going on?
when I was, my career was expanding.
Oh, okay.
I was getting all this attention. I was getting exposed to more stuff, traveling more, teaching more.
So this was the TV show and articles and the book were opening your world.
I was doing media constantly.
Yeah.
I didn't have any money. We didn't have a budget. There was only one of me. The media was free. So they loved the stuff, and so, yeah, I was a media whore. I took advantage of it. It was a way for me to, to try to get more people to paint that fence for me, to, to be reasonable around wildlife. And while that was going on, the tribe, these wonderful people, they all showed up. The parking lot was full of people. And they were just down in there staring at the house. My wife came and got me in my office, and she said, "You better come outside."
Mm.
And they were here to teach me about the spiritual side. And I knew nothing about, but I had a big knowledge about, the day-to-day of a bear's life.
Yeah.
And they didn't focus on that. They focused on the bigger picture. And so reluctantly, I didn't understand what they were talking about, and they thought it was funny. But they slowly took me in and started bringing me to these sacred ceremonies and teaching me those ways. As I was going to that college, those classes, I was starting to use it in my everyday hands-on responding to 911 calls. That became a bigger and bigger part of my life and the influence on me and what I was willing to do and what I was not willing to do.
Sounds like an expansion of your life.
Very much so. And
what was the ceremony where you'd had seasonal ceremonies with the bears?
The natives, they, unbeknownst to me, I didn't learn until I did, when the bears go to bed in Mammoth, it's by Halloween, all the bears are denned up. And when the bears go in, the bear dances, the bear clan, people I'm sharing about with you, they, in their way, they wear the hides of the bears. They perform these ancient ceremonies. But when the bear goes to den, they pay him homage by not speaking his name, not calling for his help. We let them rest and sleep and be at peace. When the bears in Mammoth wake up in the spring and come out, we have another ceremony to celebrate that we can call on the bear spirit. They're here with us. Yeah. And we pay respect and homage to that. And so we have two ceremonies a year in Bishop, but all over, people all over the place. It's not just us, but we all come together to start that way. These people that have dedicated their lives to this way of healing and sharing and crossing over to people that are in need or passing or all different problems that people have.
Mm.
They just do it constantly through the summer until it's time to put them to sleep and let them rest. And then we start the cycle over again every year.
I love that it's a cycle. I also love that it flows, it ebbs and flows, that we can't just demand and demand and demand and say, you can't sleep spiritually or physically. We need you now. It's like, this is your time to regenerate. We need to be self-sufficient maybe for a period, and then we can welcome you back. Maybe we need more of that in our lives.
You know, their churches, the church of nature, the trees, the sky, the water, the animals are obvious teachers for us. That we're exploring that today and talking about that. That's their normal. That's their everyday life. They have more, understanding in their pinky than a lot of people do in their whole being.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was one of those people, and I didn't realize what I was missing until they shared with me. And now I was able to share it with you and share it in a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, I want to ask you about today and tomorrow. What's your life now where you're not actively working for the police force, not dealing with the bears formally?
It's a good question. I've always had goals. I am one of those people that picture or envision things in my mind time after time after time, and all of these amazing things have happened in my life. Right now, I'm not in that mode, and it really leaves me lacking because I don't work for the community anymore. I don't go on 911 calls. It was a big part of my life. As men, we identify, you are Rabbi Ron. If you didn't have that,
Yeah.
it's very difficult. And
Sure.
so I'm in that time of transition right now. I readily admit it.
Yeah, of course. That's tough. And I talk to people in all walks of life who know what they're transitioning from, but haven't necessarily formulated what they're transitioning to. And maybe that opens a new, valuable, important chapter of your life.
I think the book was somewhat of a swan song to put it to rest. And as I pass on, that'll be my final word. I'm guessing that's not going to happen. I won't die quick enough. I think that I have no idea, but I think there's other surprises
Yeah, I think so too.
left in front of me.
So how does spirituality and reverence, awe show up in your life?
Slowly, it's a struggle. I'm a weak man. And I don't know how to answer your question, but being tutored by Shorty and learning about his dad's teachings.
Sorry, who's Shorty?
Shorty Stone was a spiritual leader
I see.
that took me under his wing and taught me a lot of things that I was missing in life and needed to know. And people came from around the world to come and sit with him and listen and learn and go to the sweat lodge, fast, whatever. And he had these sheds, and they were full of all kinds of crystals and obsidian, feathers, different things. They were full of this stuff. And he'd often have me go, and someone would come from far away and they wanted something, to take with them that they thought was important. And Shorty would always oblige. But like the Wizard of Oz lesson, the guy who needed a heart, the guy who needed a brain, the guy who needed courage. They already had it. So I'd say, Shorty, why are we always doing this, And he goes, hey, people need reminders. And
Validation.
they do, because we forget in our day and
we do.
in the tempo of life. And so today you're wearing a necklace. It's a reminder,
Definitely.
And so Carol's mom, Grandma, she was a wonderful woman. When she'd go to the ceremony, she would just reach down and take the dirt, and she would pat herself on the shoulders. She didn't need the crystals or the crosses or, special feathers, because she was there.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question in a long way, my association and relationship with these wonderful people that have been so gracious to take me in, pardon me, it's a reminder to stay on the red road, to stay on the path. Don't go off the rails, which is so easy to do.
Yeah. I haven't asked you, we haven't talked about the transition that you made, which is, we're talking about transitions. There was another transition that was about doing, and it was going from being a hunter and a trapper, as we know that's about following game, the chase, shooting game in that case, or trapping them. And then you became a protector of them. What was that like?
I just grew into it.
Yeah.
I was, blessed. I believe that people come first, not bears.
Yeah. I said that in the book.
Yeah. In my life, with my notoriety and social media and all that, it really attracts people that are on an extreme level.
Mm-hmm.
And they would rather see a cop shot than a bear shot.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of people that communicate with me feel that sort of strongly. I don't. If I had a crystal ball and knew you were going to be hurt by a bear today, I have no problem taking bears.
Yeah.
That's didn't serve my community. It didn't serve me. It didn't serve the bears. I was able to help people by allowing them to learn to live with bears, and it enriched their lives. And so it was very rewarding. But then I went from hunter to you call savior.
Savior and saved, I'll say.
Yeah.
In terms of how it changed your life as well.
All of it is just so abstract. We put out millions and millions of dollars of public information, brochures, signs, paid for us by our tax money. The government agencies do about, what to do if you're eaten by a bear.
Yeah.
Most years there's more men that eat people than bears of any species that eat people. Yeah. There's no brochure on that.
I haven't seen that one on the side of the freeway.
Right. So it's so odd that I'm living in the paradigm of something that we, have nightmares about. And now today, people come from around the world to visit with me and have the opportunity to see the wildlife that people have been afraid of for generations.
Yeah. You and I have, I think, a lot in common in terms of values. That's why I nod a lot when I listen to you speak. And there's something else that we share, which is fatherhood. And you've met my son, and you haven't yet met his little baby girl, but he's in this story too. What is it to be a father? What is it that you've learned? You have a grown son that you're proud of. What's that taught you?
I think it's really an important question. I think in the crazy times that we're living in today, wherever you are, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, white, brown, or black, everybody's tummies don't feel good.
Right.
A lot of people come and counsel with me and ask my advice. I think that that our children, your grandchild, I think that when we lose focus on everything we don't trust anymore, the FBI, the CIA, the President of the United States, everything is in question. We need to stay grounded. One of the ways that we can is to hyper-focus on our relationship and the best quality of life that we can provide for the little ones. We're pretty well set in our ways and have lived most of our life. It is just paramount that we do a better job with our children, our schools, education, what they're being exposed to.
Yeah.
That's going to be the future well after you and I are gone.
More personally, Steve, what do you feel like you have to this point, to whatever degree, succeeded in teaching Tyler in terms of what it is to be your son, be a man in this world?
Again, it's another blessing that I've been given. When the baby is tiny, they can't even live without your help. As it goes on, you adjust and change. Now that my son is 25, he's not a boy, he's a man. To have him be well respected, thoughtful, kind, honest, helpful, all these things, it's the best part of my life.
Yeah.
It gives me reason to live. It's a crapshoot having kids. I know wonderful people that have shitty kids. I know shitty people that have wonderful kids. It's all over the map. And so it's hard. You're betting a lot. And I was, yes, we worked hard at it. Me and his mom worked very hard at it, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And so it's never lost on me what a blessing that my son became a good adult.
Yeah. And I know it's a crapshoot. I know there are a lot of influences aside from parents, but at least we can sleep at night saying we did our best to be as good as we could be.
Yep.
And then we leave it to him and them to grow and to mature and hopefully realize the kernels of good values and wisdom, like you said, that they saw in us, imperfect people. But they learned imperfect people are strivers, people trying to live better today than we did yesterday. I'm so grateful. Feel privileged to have sat here under these trees with you here in beautiful Mammoth. And this book was the opening. That was the beginning of the conversation. I got to hear your voice and your story thanks to you and thanks to Chris Erskine. What the Bears Know, How I Found Truth and Magic in America's Most Misunderstood Creatures. We're probably the most misunderstood creatures. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you for your time.
Our producer and editor is Jonah Lee Paz. Our musical theme is composed by Amots Plessner, and our logo, graphic design by Janice Rudnunski. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.